team understand what the test tasks are. We were at a client recently observing their stand-up, and the tester was off sick that day. It was the last day of their sprint, and there was a whole bunch of testing tasks left on the last story, but they wanted to finish the story for the sprint. So they were like, well, does anyone know what she was going to test here? No, I've done dev testing. I'm sure it's fine. We don't need those tasks. I'm sure it's okay. Can somebody call her and find out? No, she's sick. So they finished the story without the tester having done any of the testing that they'd come up with, and without anyone knowing what that magical stuff was that the tester was going to do. So that's not the whole team owning quality.
So to recap, the 5 things. Testing is an activity, not a phase. The whole team is responsible, not the tester. Build the best system possible instead of trying to break the system. Prevent bugs instead of finding them and logging them. And the last one.
Be a tester, not a checker, and ask, how can you test that?
Don't be a checker, be a tester.
Okay, so now we're going to ask you to stand up again, but you must be bored by now. 21 minutes. And talk to the person next to you about what testing means to you now.
We like to make you move.
We like movement. It's good. Otherwise, you might fall asleep. Collaborate better, but you'll be doing more agile testing. The first one is to start asking, how can we test that? Don't leave a planning meeting without having asked on every single story, how can we test that? Second, change your test column to a show me column and start showing your team after every task that you've done. And the last one, which is a bit of a challenge, but give it a try, do all of your test tasks before you start your development tasks.
I know it sounds scary, but it will stop a lot of bugs.
It's really easy.
So, after we did all these slides, I had a little epiphany, and I was inspired by the Agile Manifesto, and I decided, let's write one for testing. And does anyone notice what's wrong with what I've put up here? Sorry? No? It's called the Tester's Manifesto. Thank you, Ari. Instead of the Testing Manifesto. It's not just for testers.
It's for everyone.
It's for everyone. So, again, take it out. I guess a lot. So, hands up if you're familiar with the Agile Manifesto. Excellent. So, once again, the things on the right are the things we value over the things on the left. So, we value testing throughout. Again.
those things.
Value those things over these things. So we value testing throughout over at the end. We value preventing bugs over finding bugs. We value testing understanding over checking functionality. We value building the system over breaking the system. And we value team responsibility for quality over tester responsibility. Do those make sense? Do you think you'd be able to do that in your organization? Be a bit more confident and raise a hand. 3 people think they'll be able to do that. That's excellent, awesome. Glad I've changed your lives. The rest of you can talk during tea breaks. So thank you. That's it from us. And we've deliberately left this short so that we can have lots of questions. So now is your time.
Yes.
Can you put your previous slide back for me, please? Thank you.
You can even have a copy of it if you would like.
Good. Anyone would like copies of the slides? They're hand-drawn, they're over here.
We have a hand-drawn original. Josh asked us what tool we used. I said Sam uses a pen and paper and I use a scanner.
We're quite low-tech. No questions?
Yeah.
Did you test it throughout?
We did, actually.
Yes, she drew it, I scanned it, I checked that I had it in the right order, double-checked it with her. There's a question here.
How do you do cross-functional testing where
What do you mean by cross-functional?
security, performance, all the other stuff, where it's not like in a story or something like that?
So it depends on if it is in a story. So if security is particularly important for a story, then I would test it in that story. What I think I'm going to speculate on what you're talking about is testing, regression testing, things like performance and security, making sure you haven't broken anything.
But because that will make sense to have a testing column for that kind of activity.
Do you not have automated tests for that?
Yeah, we do.
So those run every time you change a line of code?
But sometimes you need to get better or something, just with more stuff to it than just even one story, right? It's just a set of features that you have to test for security. It's not only one story, right?
So if that's important to you, so I understand sometimes you break a feature down into a bunch of different stories, and at the end you want to check that they all work together correctly. I would add that testing to the last story of that set of features. And that last feature is only done when all of those features work together. Does that make sense? But in that last story, in fact, even in the first story, I'd be saying, how are we expecting this to be tested at the end of all of these features? What part of this stuff do we expect to work after the first story? What part's going to work after the second? And what part's only going to work after the third story? So you should know up front which tests are going to pass at which point. I would even write those tests before you write the last story, before you get to the last story, and just know they're only going to pass when that last one is there. That's a way to validate that. So, yeah. Okay.
So your point 3, does that imply that testers should have some understanding of architecture and perhaps even code?
I think we're saying business.
Yes, so I don't think necessarily means code or architecture, but definitely business. They should be domain experts. You're trusting them currently to test your system and be the gatekeepers of quality. They should definitely have domain experience.
There's a great quote, I was looking at an old presentation that came from Janet Gregory, which is, testers are not plug and play. You can't take one off this team and put them in that team and expect them just to work, because most of their knowledge comes from the understanding of the domain. If you're plugging them to a different team with a different business domain, they need to learn that stuff before they're going to be effective testers.